With a new update coming for Stardew Valley soon, we can also probably expect adjustments to existing content in the game. Previous examples include lowering the sell price of Cookout Kits from 3,000 gold all the way to 80, or the famous duck buff of 2020, where ducks now cost less than a third of what they used to, and duck feather prices increased to make them a bit more competitive with other coop animals. Now, while I'm very happy with where Stardew Valley is now, there's just a few adjustments I would personally make to turn it into the ideal version I believe it could be. Emphasis on that last part, this might not be the ideal vision that Concerned Ape, or you for that matter, has for the game. My changes are going to be focused on increasing the variety of the early and the late game by making more items and more methods useful. First, let's talk about the elephant in the room, the worm bin. This is the item I believe to be in the worst shape out of everything in the game. I made an entire video about it alone, but as a summary, the materials cost too much, it's unlocked too late, and it's inconsistent. In the comments of the video, an alarming amount of people mentioned that they just use it for decoration. Assuming that's not meant to be the main purpose of this machine, it needs some adjustments. For the changes, I would move it to be unlocked at level 4, and honestly, nothing really needs to replace it at level 8, there's already enough unlocks there. I'd change the gold bar to a second iron bar in the crafting recipe, and then reduce the hardwood and fiber down to 5 pieces each. Finally, for its production, I'd change the 2 to 5 bait to just a solid 5 bait a day, and if you still want it to have some random chance, 4 to 5 bait, with a low chance of giving wild bait, similar to the way seed makers have a small chance to make ancient seeds. Now, the Cookout Kit is in a somewhat similar position, where it's unlocked way too late, especially when the average player would already have their farmhouse upgraded by the time they hit level 9 foraging to unlock the Cookout Kit. So they'd already have a kitchen, making the Cookout Kit almost obsolete. Full honesty, let's just do a switcheroo with the survival burger. It requires eggplant anyway, which you probably won't have until fall at the earliest, and guess what? You can't cook it without either a Cookout Kit or a kitchen, so there. Also, I don't think we need to increase the sale price of the Cookout Kit after the nerf it previously had. Not all items are meant to be sold, so the 80 gold stands. Speaking of items to be sold, tea saplings. These have become a sort of smash hit moneymaker since they sell for 500 gold each and only require wood, fiber, and wild seeds. This may be a controversial change, but I want to adjust that sale price down to about 350 gold. As they are now, they're such a good moneymaker that it starts to take attention away from what should be making you money early on, and that's farming and fishing. Not only that, but it takes away from what the purpose of the tea sapling is in the first place, to make tea. At 350 gold, the sale price of tea is a bit more enticing. Bee houses. They work indoors and with potted plants now. That's it. That's the whole section. Cut and print it. Okay, so this would essentially enable you to have a year-round source of fairy rose honey, which is the most valuable kind. The largest glaring flaw of Stardew Valley for me is the grind of getting enough money to obtain all of the obelisks and the golden clock for perfection. Year-round fairy rose honey would compete with things like starfruit and ancient fruit wine, adding more variety to the late game money grind. And one last change, there's gotta be some way to lock a crop in place so that while we're harvesting the bee houses, we don't accidentally pluck the flower. On that same line of thinking, mead. It's gotta scale with what type of honey you put into the keg. 2 times the price of the honey to match with the current rate of basic honey at 100 gold to basic mead at 200 gold. So the only building I'm going to adjust is the slime hutch, mostly because it's massively slept on. As it is, it produces about 980 gold a day. Of course, this fluctuates depending on what slime eggs you get from using the slime egg press, but that's the average. This isn't enough to entice most people to use it though. It's a fairly large building and it's expensive to build. So I have a fun system that I want to implement here. You know how it doesn't really matter what kind of slimes you have in the hutch, they produce the same slime balls no matter what? No longer. The color of the slime ball is going to match the color of the slimes, and not only will you get more slime from rarer slime ball colors, but they'll also drop items from that color slime's drop table. So green slime balls can drop algae, blue can drop jade and winter roots, red can drop coal, purple can drop iridium ore, and tiger can drop ginger, mango saplings, and pineapple seeds, as well as being another source for the tiger hat. That's not all though. For those of you acquainted with the slime breeding system, you may know that you can breed 4 different color slimes, such as black, yellow, and most importantly, white slimes. If you go through all of that effort and learn the system, you should also get rare slime ball colors that give you guaranteed coal, gold ore, and in the case of white slimes, diamonds. If you're wondering how all of that works, Brandigan, by the way, has a whole set of videos of him trying to breed for these white slimes. It's quite the process, and I absolutely recommend watching it. These changes would hopefully make slime breeding a more common practice among players. As it is right now, no one even thinks about it. So there's several changes that we could make to the copper pan to adjust its viability. Personally, I think that the lucky ring alone makes it worth using, but what bothers me is think about all the times you've seen a panning spot and had no pan. They're infrequent enough that it's not really something you're always thinking about prepping for. As such, I think the copper pan should just be a wallet item. If you can't upgrade it, there's not really a reason it needs to be a whole item. Maybe we could get a separate copper pan hat just to retain the feature of it. Look at this thing. Do I even need to say it? It literally does nothing. It adjusts a stat that wasn't implemented in the final game, and I'm honestly surprised it hasn't been fixed yet. I think it'd be fine if it just increased defense by 3, matching the buff it gives when used in the forge. Yes, it would be outclassed by the Crabshell Ring's 5 defense, but I think it could work as a more accessible and early game option, similar to the small glow and small magnet rings. Good rings, but outclassed later. So fairy dust is a very late game item. You unlock the recipe for it after completing Birdie's quest on Ginger Island. With it being unlocked so late, in addition to having a very expensive recipe, it needs to be powerful, but as of right now, there's not a single way that you can use fairy dust that will offset the cost of making it. So while I don't want to make it overwhelmingly good, I do like the idea of having more late game diversity in crops by making fairy roses viable, and deciding exactly how many you should grow is more engaging than just absolute fields of starfruit and ancient fruit. So instead of 1 fairy dust, you now get 3 from the recipe. This makes it profitable to use on things like kegs or casked wine, and not feel like as much of a waste when you use it on, say, a tapper or something that you can get a specific resource from sooner. And while fairy dust is a late game unlock and allowed to be powerful, the hopper is unlocked even later, from the key gem shop of the Golden Walnut Room. Items obtained here should nearly be cheat codes. The hopper is competing with magic bait that lets you catch fish out of season, or Pierre's stock list allowing you to buy any seed at any time. So what the hopper does right now is fill whatever machine is below it with whatever's in the hopper. So you can walk by all your kegs, grab the coffee or whatever, and it'll automatically start the next coffee. What everyone expected it to do is also pull resources out of nearby machines, automating the process completely. So I'm gonna add that functionality. Now, it'll pull whatever's above it and push to what's below it, essentially creating an extremely reduced and expensive automate mod. This also means that you'll need at least 2 of them to create a fully automated task, to make up for them being a bit stronger. To finish things off, here's a couple of smaller adjustments to round things out. Geode crushers should have the replication of the last thing Clint opened added to their description. Even though it's a sort of exploit, it's fun and validates the existence of the Geode Crusher. The Walnut Room should properly open up at 100 walnuts instead of 101. I hesitated adding this change because it's probably just a bug anyway, but it's still there. Trains can now drop a wider variety of items, like Joja Cola and food from passenger cars, or hay and forageables from animal cars. That, and they should drop the items from their existing drop table more often. Most of the time, you hear there's a train, and you go up there and there's nothing, so it's kind of just an ignorable event. I'd like to fix that. Giant crops should still be able to give you quality crops. If you didn't know, they only give you normal quality crops. When it's such a rare event, it kind of sucks that you can almost lose money because you're not going to get the effects of any of your fertilizer on it. And now, after his 7 heart event, Shane now hates any alcoholic item and loves Joja Cola, both providing a cheaper loved item for him as a reward for getting his hearts up and matching his character growth. I think that covers just about everything I had issues with. Sometimes it's hard for me to consider what would be a good change for beginners since I'm well into the game, just a bit. So hopefully some of these changes also benefit first playthroughs as well. Let me know what additional changes you'd like to see. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.